Hello and welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. It's me and Zach today, and we're going to be giving the comprehensive rundown. Don't worry, it won't be too comprehensive, but a rundown of the World Cup that's just finished. England ended up being victorious. Yeah, and
Cool.
we did a whole prediction video. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It was with Cricket for Us, and
2.0.
yeah, we friend of the show, and we did like all these predictions and stuff, and who we thought would do well, who we thought might let us down, and yeah, so we'll kind of revisit some of those, and just see what happened. So if you want to see our best 11s, which we all released, all three Cricket Nerds released them, then check out our Instagram. It is at Cricket Nerds Pod. The link to it will be in the link tree down in the description. While you're there, you might as well subscribe and leave a like, just because it's the polite thing to do. So
Yes, and also the reason people should follow our Instagram is because we do things like that. We post
hmm,
our best teams for certain things. We'll be posting some stuff about the IPL, which I know everyone is keen on who watches this channel. So yeah, check us out there.
let's just jump into it. Overall thoughts on the tournament, Zach?
It's been awesome. Really enjoyed it. Because England won. Well, not actually just because England won. I think we mentioned it a bit in our last podcast. I like the fact that it wasn't just a win the toss, win the game. I also thought it was amazing that a lot of the teams which you would have thought wouldn't have won certain games did win certain games and caused a few upsets. And also, it was full of twists and turns because those upsets meant that Pakistan, for example, snuck through and managed to get to the final when they were basically out of the group stages. So it's crazy things like that happened, and you love to see that. What about you? Did you enjoy this tournament?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was I said this in the last podcast. 160, 170 is my favorite score in T20 now. And it was, there was just something in it for everybody. We saw really good batting, we saw really good bowling. It wasn't a competition for that would be made for England, I don't think, in terms of the conditions, which I
Mm,
was kind of expecting, because it wasn't oh well, no matter how good the pitch is, we will just outscore the competition. It was really a bowlers tournament, and a good batsman's tournament. You had to be a good batsman. You had to construct an innings carefully. You had to think sensibly, and you really had to capitalize on the opportunities when they came. So, like, players that we thought would do well, like Surya Kumar Yadav, Joss Butler, they did do well,
mm,
because they were not only like insane talents, but they capitalized on those deliveries that they needed to. And then
yeah.
we saw some amazing performances from people that previously we hadn't heard of, and some that like just did so much better than we thought they would as bowlers and as batsmen. So it was an outstanding tournament, and I think every team should come away thinking that they've learned something at least. Um, and yeah, we could probably go through a few teams actually and just kind of discuss whether they did well or whether they didn't do well, and kind of what we've learned from them. Um,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, I think that might be interesting. So the first one I want to talk about, West Indies,
Who are
because
they? Who are the West Indies? Yeah, they didn't do well, did they? They crashed out of the qualifying. And I think that is a slight negative from me of this tournament. Well, firstly, the rain let down a few games, like we didn't get to see England versus Australia. But the fact that there weren't that many teams in the main thing, there were only 12. When you think about how many upsets there were, including West Indies getting knocked out of the qualifying, I think it's a shame that teams like the West Indies didn't get to play England and Australia and Sri Lanka and India and Pakistan. They didn't have that chance to play the main teams. And the reason they didn't is because they played so poorly in the first round. They lost to Scotland. And did they lose to Ireland or Zimbabwe? I can't remember now. It was so long ago. But yeah, it wasn't great from the West Indies. Oh, they lost to Ireland, I think.
Yeah,
But
it
it
was
wasn't
Ireland.
great from the West Indies. And I think they have some players who are high profile players all over the world in 2020 cricket, and they didn't feature in this tournament. Sunil Narine, Andre Russell, Christopher Henry Gale, I know he's retired.
Shimron
And also
Hetmyer.
Shimron Hetmyer, who missed the plane for serious reasons, obviously, but still, it's these players who they want to feature, and the West Indies cricket board isn't in the right place at the moment, because if it was, then they'd get their best players playing in these tournaments, which is where they should want to play, because we've seen some really good games. So yeah, West Indies have been a bit of a letdown. What are your thoughts on Ireland?
I'm really I'm a huge fan of Ireland. I think Irish cricket is really exciting. They've got some really good young players. First one that jumps to mind is Josh Little, who tore England a new one, and he was, I'm pretty sure he featured on some of our World 11s. Not giving too many spoilers because you got to check the Instagram out. But he was outstanding, and yeah, like so many Irish players are really good, and I'm completely with you on this. I think it would be so much better to see all of these teams like play the big teams as well, because in T20 there just aren't associate nations anymore. Like so many players are able to go around the world and go into these franchise tournaments. There's so much space for them that like Namibia has got some really good players. I think about David Visa, he's class. And just they didn't get to I feel like they didn't get to have the extended tournament they deserved. There was so much drama in the qualifiers that it just flew under the radar. I mean, like there were the practice matches before the Super 12s that like a lot of the big teams were playing, like England versus Pakistan and stuff, England versus Australia. Those were happening while the qualifiers were going on. It's out of order, but there we go. Very impressed with Ireland. What were your thoughts on our Scottish neighbours?
Well, they didn't make it to the main round, but I think they've impressed in beating the West Indies. But I think Scotland are in a similar vein to Ireland, that they've got some young players coming through who are impressing. That my issue with Scotland is that they're relying on certain players to pull them through. They've not got like one player who I would say is they've not got like a group effort, if that makes sense. Like you think about Richie Berrington at the top of the order, there's a lot of pressure on him on scoring a lot of runs for Ireland. And then in the bowling, you've got a few bowlers like Mark Watt, the spinner, who is really impressed. His cheat sheet, that is a wonderful thing.
It's my favorite thing.
Yeah. So they've got some exciting bowlers in Mark Watt and Brad Wheel as well, but it's their middle order batting which doesn't fire as often as it should, and I think there's a few gaps there. Whereas Ireland seem to have all bases covered for a 2020 game, Scotland are lacking there, and I think that's just part of the issue of being not one of the strongest teams, is that the strongest teams seem to have all the bases covered, whereas the other teams are kind of playing catch up. But I think the positives is that Scottish cricket, Irish cricket, it's on the up. Same with Dutch cricket as well, and Zimbabwe seem to be coming back. So there's lots of positives for these not so big teams, but that they've definitely got places to go. Why don't we just run through who else has impressed you? Because I would say that the two that have impressed me are England for winning, and also the Netherlands for beating South Africa. They're the two that have impressed me the most in this tournament. Who would you say has impressed you the most in this tournament?
Just to narrow it down to a few is difficult because I've been impressed by so many different aspects of so many different teams. I would have said Sri Lanka if it wasn't for the fact that they'd already won the Asia Cup. So it wasn't necessarily this tournament that they'd really impressed me. I thought they had quite a middling performance, actually. I thought they underperformed in a lot of aspects. So the team that actually did impress me quite a lot, even though they had a bit of a torrid time, was Zimbabwe. And it was because Zimbabwe fans it's a phenomenon that I haven't seen for a while. And it was really nice to see that so many people were really passionate about Zimbabwe cricket. And there were some really good players there. Sikandar Raza was, without a doubt, the MVP of the whole World Cup. Like, he was, of any player, he carried that team the most. He took tons of wickets and he scored tons of runs, and it was brilliant. So Zimbabwe, yes, they finished bottom of Group 2, but I was super impressed, and it's so nice to see Zimbabwean cricket kind of just have any element of a resurgence. The other team that really impressed me was South Africa, up until they absolutely bottled it, because they were looking really good until they weren't. So that was, I'd say those two. And then obviously England, like the big boys, England, India. It was nice to see India actually play well this time. It was a shame that it didn't come up for them the whole way, but they did look really good.
Yeah. I think if we went through all the teams, there would always be like the positives and the negatives. And I think a team like Afghanistan, who are sat bottom of Group 1 and only got points because of no results. Like, I feel like Afghanistan, they're always on the edge. Whereas an Ireland seems to cause upsets every tournament it's in, Afghanistan doesn't. And I don't know if that's because Afghanistan are kind of like Scotland. They've got some really top quality 2020 players in Rashid Khan and Mohammed Nabi and also Mujibur Rahman. They're 3 top quality world class T20 players, which Scotland don't really have top T20 players like that. And yet Afghanistan seem to not be performing well because they're relying so heavily on those players.
Yeah,
like Rashid Khan is like one of the best batsmen and he's still batting at 8.
And there seems to be like a second tier, which is like they then have middling performers, because like they have players that are good, like Ramanullah Gurbaz, Fazal Farooqi, and Naveen ul Haq as well, but they are like that second tier. They're all right. They've got potential and they can tear through a side on their day, but their day doesn't come that often. And then the rest are just relatively inconsistent and just not that good. So it is a shame for Afghanistan, because I would like to see them do well. And I was still scared of them when England played against them. But yeah, it is a shame that their team just doesn't ever seem to fire properly.
Well, I guess when you look at Ireland and the Netherlands, they're a bit of an enigma team where a winner could come from anywhere. Like you think about how Australia almost lost to Ireland because of Lorcan Tucker. Well, yeah, at least brought their run rate down. And then same with the Netherlands with Ackerman scoring all those runs to beat South Africa. And they have these players just who from nowhere win games, whereas Afghanistan kind of have to rely on Rashid Khan every time. So teams are going to do their homework on Rashid Khan and they're going to play him sensibly, aren't they? And not lose wickets against him, which kind of nullifies that effect. So they almost need to find those star quality from their batsmen and their all-rounders. But let's move on to those individual players then, because there have been some impressions that have been made. For example, Sikandar Raza, as you've said. I also have thought that what's he called? O'Dowd from the Netherlands.
Max O'Dowd.
Max O'Dowd. He's been very good at the top of the order, and he's one that Asjad talked about as well in our preview to the World Cup. Yeah, Max O'Dowd, he's been very good at the top of the order. And I know he played in the qualifying, but he still finished as the second highest run scorer. So, or the third highest run scorer. So he's done very well. What are your thoughts on Glenn Phillips as well?
Oh, he was brilliant, wasn't he? Like he's kind of come out of nowhere, because I can't remember who he plays for in the IPL now. Is it? I think it might be KKR.
No, he plays for Sunrisers.
Was it Sunrisers? Yeah. So
Yeah.
he's barely done anything in like that kind of in the IPL scene, which is where we are here of a lot of the kind of the really good T20 players. And he's always been there, but he's kind of been he's been quite a lot like a Sam Billings in my eyes, like
Mm,
someone that's almost he's been a slight periphery. And I know he's a really talented cricketer because he was a wicket keeper that was then bowling off spin and taking tons of wickets at one point. And he's
yeah.
really young. He's only like 25, 26.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, to have the tournament that he had just suddenly becoming brilliant and also being really, really quick. That's really exciting. And it's good news for Sunrisers into the IPL, but
They
just
need
good
it.
news that, yeah. And it's good news for New Zealand as well, because that kind of middle order legendary batsman is exactly what they need in that white ball side,
Mm,
especially when players like Daryl Mitchell was a bit shaky. Jimmy Neesham was good, but underutilized. So, yeah, having Glenn Phillips like that is outstanding for them. And I was super, super impressed with him. I thought
yeah.
it was a good World Cup for good cricketers and good cricketers kind of it seemed like everything came balanced. Like balance was restored to the force because like Virat Kohli, he was so
Yeah.
good, and it's so
Mm.
good to see him be the top run scorer again. It's been so long. What did you think of just Kohli in general?
Oh, well, there's so much to talk about with Kohli because he not just played very classy in every single game that he played, but he also hit one of the most outrageous shots I've ever seen when he flicked Harris Ralph back over his head for six. It's like a back foot pull shot almost straight. It was ridiculous. So that shot in itself is part of what makes Kohli awesome. But I also think the manner in which he played held India's middle order together, and
Mm.
it freed up someone like Suryakumar Yadav. And when we talked about India when they lost to England in the semi-final, it was mostly to do with the fact that they didn't have the backup batsman lower down the order because England exposed their lower to middle order because they got Sky out early, and it meant that you're relying on players like Axar Patel at 7. Whereas when you look at other teams in the tournament, they had some very big hitters coming in at number 7, and Axar Patel isn't necessarily known for his big hitting. And I think that was India's issue. But because Kohli played so well, they didn't need to worry about it because he was coming in at number 3 and cementing that middle order. Um, so yeah, he was awesome. I also think Sky as well. He's a massive player in world cricket at the moment. He's the best 2020 batsman going around. Um, Maybe him and Joss Butler. Um, Alex Hales. Give me your thoughts on Alex Hales.
Very impressed. Very happy to see it happen.
Mm,
A lot of the time I've seen Alex Hales in the last few years, it's been like he's done a really good knock, and then it's kind of been punctuated by a few lackluster and not very good performances.
yeah.
But this World Cup, he was really good,
Mm,
and we needed him because Jason Roy obviously falling into some just freakish patch of form, and
mm,
then I mean, it was so bad. And then Johnny Bairstow falling off a golf tee.
yeah.
Um, so we needed him to do well, but fortunately we do
Yeah.
have a plethora of really good opening batsmen in England.
Mm,
And yeah, it was great to see, and it was nice to see because it did feel like a bit of a redemption arc for him after being such a controversial figure, going through all the just making all the stupid decisions that he has, to then come back, be accepted and forgiven, and then to go on to be a really integral part of the winning side. It was
yeah.
a good character arc for Alex Hales. I
Oh,
liked the
definitely.
storyline. I'm looking forward to the movie. Um, what do you think of Shadab Khan? Because
Mm.
that felt like another situation where it was a good cricketer that actually we were all hyping up, but he hadn't done that much going into it.
Yeah, Shadab Khan is someone who's impressed a lot in the PSL, and that's about it. And a lot of the high profile 2020 players are high profile because they've done stuff in the IPL. Whereas Pakistani players can't play in the IPL. Whereas Shadab Khan, he has played some outrageous innings and bowled outrageously as well. I think the way he bowls his leg spin is kind of similar to Rashid Khan in terms of it's quite quick. But it's I think his length is what is really impressive. He just manages to hit the right spot every time. Kind of like Hasaranga. Hasaranga's another one who gets the right length to bowl his leggies. And he causes the batsmen issues. Like you can see they don't really know how to approach his bowling. But then also his batting is such an asset lower down the order because he can change the tempo of the game. He's kind of in the mold of Shahid Afridi. He's not as extraordinary as Shahid Afridi, who is very much a enigma in world cricket and done some stupid things like bite a cricket ball. He's not like that, but he's the same in terms of he's bowled very good leggies and he can smack the ball a long way. So yeah, he's been awesome. But in my opinion, the player of the tournament is Sam Curran. No, he's not really done much with the bat, but you don't have to be an all-rounder to be player of the tournament. I think his bowling alone has been outstanding. The fact that he's been able to swing the new ball and bowl at the death, he's just been very impressive. And especially as he was England's primary death bowler, and he only went at 6.5 runs and over throughout the whole tournament. Like it's absolutely crazy. And the way he bowled in the final as well, going for hardly any runs at the back end. For me, he's been the standout player.
And he's such an impressive person because he's only 24. He's still super young, and he led the England bowling attack, which that alone is really impressive to say, because you think of the wealth of experience that England bowlers have got, and he was leading that attack. And you're right, like every time England needed a wicket, it was either him or Adil Rashid that they throw the ball to. That's quite a compliment for Sam Curran to be in the same category as Adil Rashid, who, like, can you think of another leggy that England could play that would be as effective as Adil Rashid?
Not at all.
No. So, like, that's England's premier wicket taker in a way, because that's what leg spin is useful for. And Sam Curran was just that point of difference. I still don't know how. It still baffles me. I just think he's super accurate. That must be it. And it shows that you don't have to be, 6 foot, 7 foot tall to be a fast bowler. That's out the window now. Throw that coaching manual away. Okay. You can be a normal height person, or even
below average.
like slightly below average.
Yeah.
And if you're bowling accurately and keeping a cool head,
you have left arm,
and you are left arm, then you can be the best bowler in the world. So that was very fun to see. I absolutely agree. I think Sam Curran was probably the best. I would personally say that my player of the tournament was Sikandar Raza, just because he literally carried a team, and they beat Pakistan. But I think Sam Curran, in terms of who actually had the biggest influence on the overall result of the World Cup. Yes, he did.
And also he was commentating at the last World Cup in the UAE last year. So he's gone from being a commentator to being the bowler of the tournament, in my opinion.
That's a bit like Dinesh Karthik, though. He was commentating, and then suddenly he became he got back in the India side, which nobody saw coming. So what
it happens.
Maybe injuries are good for people. That's what I'm learning.
So wait till Jofra Archer comes back and Johnny Bairstow comes back.
Now, I'm very aware that we haven't mentioned a single Australian player. Maybe with the exception of Marcus Stoinis. So if we were going to talk about who had a quiet tournament, I'd say Australia. Because when you actually look at their team, it's a team of match winners. But I think after this tournament, they really need to have a look at how their team is constructed, because it was a pretty poor performance overall, wasn't it?
I think what we're seeing is Australia, who were looking so impressive last year in both Test match cricket and the white ball cricket as well. I think they've kind of got a model which is almost old fashioned in that they're still playing, a lot of players who play in the Test side are still playing in the one day side. Now, in my opinion, I wouldn't have Steve Smith anywhere near the 2020 side because he's, I feel like he's not as good a Test match batter because of how much 2020 cricket he's playing.
Yeah.
Likewise, I don't think, although they're very good, I don't think Pat Cummins and to an extent Josh Hazlewood should be playing in the 2020 side either, because they need to focus on Test cricket. And there's so many talented Australian players who could have played, and young talented players like you think of Josh Philippi, Josh Inglis, to name two really good young players who hit the ball hard and aren't afraid to give it a go. And then you've got Steve Smith who's scoring a run a ball. Like there's something not right about that.
I think
I think
somebody like Nathan Ellis as well should
Nathan Ellis with
really
the
have been
ball.
in the Australia side. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that Cameron Green did really well in the lead up to the tournament. So it makes me think, well, why didn't they play him in the first game? Instead, they bring him in as almost like he's going to do this amazing things, but he's not played in the tournament yet. He's not got used to the tournament yet. So start him at the start of the tournament. Don't wait until it's too late.
You know what? That deserves a bit more time, actually. The whole Cameron Green thing is the weirdest thing, because like they even dropped Aaron Finch down to the middle order for a while, just so they could get Cameron Green opening. That was what they were doing all through the start. We were like, they want Cam Green to play, right? Because he was very exciting. He's 2 meters tall, and he was doing really well. Like there were points of difference with Cam Green, but yeah, then they attack Josh Inglis with a golf club so that he can't play, so that they can get Cam Green in as the injury replacement, and then they don't play him. It was really odd, because it did seem like everything was gearing towards, oh, we've managed to get him in now. Like, it was very unfortunate for Inglis, and hopefully gets better soon. But Cam Green coming in did seem like it was a really good thing for Australia's side. And then you're right, they didn't use him, and it was the decision making in that side is bizarre. The management of Australia kind of need to look at even just that aspect in isolation and to be like, what was our decision making here? Like, either we give the players that we're going to play in the World Cup experience and practice, or we don't. There shouldn't be an in between there.
I think you could see a clear plan from England, whose team is built around the top order. Josh Buller and Alex Hales go absolutely mental at the top of the order, try and smash as many runs as they can. And then you've got someone like David Milan who can anchor the innings for the middle order and the lower order to fire. And he's kind of the float player. Yeah. And I think that when you look at a team like India, their game plan is let's build a platform for Suryakumar Yadav to fire. Pakistan, it's similar to England. It's Babar Azam and Rizwan. So with these teams, who is the key player? We need to build the innings around them. And Australia have players like that who should have the innings built around them. At Royal Challengers Bangalore, the innings is built around Glenn Maxwell in the middle order. Yeah. Why isn't he the key player for Australia? Also, Tim David, he's been so good all around the world. Why haven't they built their innings around the middle order of Tim David and Glenn Maxwell? Instead, you're kind of like, well, who is the key player in this Australian lineup? Is it David Warner? Doesn't look like it. Is it Aaron Finch? Well, no, because his form's awful. So they need to identify their key players and really build the team around that, because at the moment they've just, you're right, the decision making is awful.
Yeah. But there we go. England won. So that's all. That's the main
that's
thing.
All that matters.
That's the main takeaway. England won. And they deserve to win. I think most teams now can kind of appreciate that England have been sort of pioneers in white ball for a while now, and I think they've reaped their rewards. They deserve to win that T20 World Cup as well as the 50 over one. So that is very good. And yeah, I think it's only a matter of time before some teams follow. Like India in particular is a team where just too many people want to be the anchor. It seems like they get in the India side, and then because there's so much competition, they don't want to like throw the wickets away. They don't want to play that cameo. They want to play an innings. And you can only really afford to have one or maximum two players that do that. And I think that's what England proved, that, when it was Ben Stokes and David Milan both trying to play the anchor role, we struggled a lot more. Whereas when it was like one of them, it then meant that the pressure was taken off everybody else, because you knew that there were plenty of people that were just going to go and try and fire and really get ahead of that asking rate. And
maybe that's why there's so many talented English white ball players in the country right now, because they've been freed up by the mentality of how England's playing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, maybe that is it. But yeah, there we go. There's our rundown of the World Cup. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like us to do any kind of content on the IPL retentions, anything like that, then let us know down below. If you don't want to see it, let us know down below, because
we'll still upload it.
Yeah, we'll upload it. We don't care. Don't forget to check out our social medias, including the Instagram that has a lot more content on now. We've actually started putting some stuff on. It's quite good. You can also listen to our podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Other than that, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys later.